welcome to Japan by River Cruise with your hosts Ollie and Bobby. I'm Bobby Judo. I'm calling in from Japan.
And I'm Ollie Horn, calling in from the UK.
On today's Japan by River Cruise, we'll be discussing moral lines in the sand in the Japanese entertainment industry and what happens when you cross them. And as always, we're going to take an in-depth look at the world of Japanese river cruises, including this week's river cruise recommendation. Ollie?
Yes, this week is a cash-only singles cruise that goes all the way through the heart of Hokkaido that's caused an unlikely dispute between Star Wars fans and Star Trek fans. More on that later.
Speaking of cash only, we're going to introduce you to 5 easy ways to spot a Japanese river cruise scam, as well as 3 easier ways to run one. But first, soap talk.
Yes, it's soap talk time. Bobby, why do we call it soap talk?
We call it soap talk because your Japanese pronunciation needs work.
What do I say?
You say soap talk. You say sekken banashi.
What should I be saying?
Sekken banashi.
Sounds the same to me. Bobby, last week we spent a total of 70 minutes talking about me, which in
17 minutes
my view,
and 29 seconds.
You have complained about this and have said that we need to spend an equivalent amount of time talking about you, while also simultaneously saying that we spent too long talking about me, having both your cake and eating it. So please, can you talk about yourself for a total of between 7 and 8 minutes? We spoke about briefly what I was doing in Japan. Can you summarize in a sentence what you do in Japan?
It took you 2 minutes to ask me that question.
What can I say? Sound of my own voice. Nice.
I am a TV personality. I started off as a YouTuber back before YouTuber was a word in Japan. I started in 2009. I've been in Japan for a total of 13 years now, just into my 14th year. But I started as an English teacher with the JET program here, and then I started YouTubing. I got onto local TV, worked up to local TV in the neighboring prefecture as well, and now do occasional national jobs. The term is talento, and it took me a long time to feel comfortable calling myself talento. The standard joke being, in Japan, a TV personality is called the talent, even though they don't have any.
Have a talent. Right. I mistakenly thought this word was unique to Japan, because when I was introduced as a talento, I thought, this must be just a weird use of English that they've adopted. But actually,
it makes me so sad that you were introduced as a talento. And yeah, it is. It's used abroad. I mean, like, who's going to be the talent? At the event.
Yeah, right. What's interesting about you is that it wasn't like in the US you were a musical theatre kid who was destined for fame and fortune. You seem to have found this. Don't look at me as if to say, what do you mean I'm not destined for fame and fortune?
I'm destined for huge things. How dare you? No, I've always enjoyed the spotlight. I've always enjoyed attention. I wasn't in drama. I wasn't in journalism or anything like that. But I think I found out as a foreigner in Japan, you get so much attention, and I found out that was kind of my thing. I liked it.
Have you ever seen the comic book Charisma Man?
I think I've seen a webcomic.
Yeah, I think that's it. There's a webcomic called Charisma Man, which is like a guy that's a loser in the US, but comes to Japan and has like the look that kind of really appeals to the paradigm of kind of Western beauty standards. And I'm not for one moment suggesting that you were a loser back in the United States. That's for other people to suggest. But what I am going to suggest is you do have an archetypally good-looking face.
Well, I appreciate that. I do get comments from Japanese people saying that I'm what they expect an American to look at. I've been called by more than one person on more than one occasion the Disney Prince.
Goodness me.
Yeah. So I parlayed that. I figured out that attention is my drug, and that I can get a lot of it in Japan. But I got onto TV, and I've been on TV now for 10 years. I've done things like I still do a weekly cooking show for a local Joho Bangumi, a local evening news show. I did the soccer news for a morning show for 5 years, and then I transitioned into like a travel segment that I do for them once a week. I do a handful of jobs, but first 3 years I was an English teacher. Then for a couple of years I did part-time jobs on the side while I tried to get into TV. And for the last 6 to 7 years, I've been doing TV full-time and have gotten, I'm not like nationally famous, but I've been on some of the most famous Japanese TV shows as myself, not as like, a token foreigner or a token foreigner even, but as a TV personality.
Right, and what's interesting in Japan is, I mean, we like to think like people deride people like the Kardashians for just kind of being famous for fame's sake, right?
Right.
Like
right.
they just appear on things. But Japan has been doing this for decades, right? Having someone who's just like professionally on TV, right? And I suppose you found a niche through your cooking and also through kind of talking about international issues. But you know, when you're on these shows, you are kind of a figure in your own right, aren't you?
Yeah, when you first start out, it really is kind of just like they expect a foreigner to be there for foreignness and just for the sake of having something that seems international. So you don't actually have to speak the language. You don't actually have to do the job. And it took me a long time to get to the stage where I had a character, a brand that wasn't just dependent upon me not being Japanese. To be able to show that I could do the job as well as or better than a Japanese reporter could do it, and to create a demand for that. Because so many times you walk in and you go, okay, well, I can do this job really well if you just let me. And they're like, no, we just need someone to say wow. Which, when your competition is anyone with a foreign face who can say wow, you can't really raise your rates. You can't really step up in the industry. So locally building, a brand as a TV personality has taken a really long time.
But that's not to say that there aren't still TV producers that will just completely not get this, right? And it must be so frustrating. I certainly had this, that like you think that you've built a certain amount of credibility, right? And you've got a show reel that shows you can do, real reporting and real interviews in Japanese. And then all of a sudden they just come out with absolute nonsense about what they expect you to be as an American.
Well, I think the funniest thing and the epitome of kind of like that treatment for me is I did this like 2-day shoot with a director that we did this long, in-depth look at a certain area of Japan that was for an English audience in Singapore. And it was a really high-level production. We did a really good job. We produced something really, really great. And then a couple of months later, I was the MC at a Halloween party, and this director showed up for a local news channel to do the story on the Halloween party. And he sees me and he goes, "Oh, I know this guy. I know he can speak. I know he'll give me good sound bites. I know he'll give me good content. Let's interview him." And it wasn't a paying thing. It was they were there to do a news story, and they said, "Would you help us out?" So in the middle of my job, I took 20 minutes to do an interview for them. And then I watched the news segment that was produced the next day, and they used like a 2-second clip of me going, "Halloween is fun," and they credited me as American. Like, it didn't say Bobby Judo. It didn't say like even MC of the party. My credit was America Jin, which just is like American guy.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And what's your future in the industry?
I don't know. It's a good question. Locally, I've got like a stable. I've got 5 or 6 good gigs that are regular that I can make a living off of. But I hope that with the Olympics coming up, I can get a handful of national jobs a year to continue to raise my profile, because that lets you sustain the career locally long term. I'm happy to be local. I don't want to be the Atsukiri Jason anymore. I don't want to be the Dave Spector. And this is, I think, will be a really good lead into the news story that I want to talk about today, because we are going to talk about like what you can and can't do on TV, what you do and do not want to do as a celebrity or as a famous person, and where you draw those moral lines and what happens when you cross them. So let's stop soap talk here and
time for the news. Bobby, what's the story this week?
11 Japanese comedians suspended for appearing at, quote, antisocial organization party. In Japan, especially in the comedy world, agencies run pretty much everything. There are no There are no like really freelance successful Japanese comedians, and very few in the talent industry overall. But Yoshimoto is one of the two major, long-standing Japanese talent agencies, and they had 11 of their performers get busted for performing what's called yami egyo, which is
It's basically
egyo
doing
selling
work off. Yeah,
off the
it's
book,
doing.
yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yami
And
means darkness, right? So they did not go through their agency, and they got paid to appear at an appearance fee, basically, at a party for an antisocial organization. And apparently, these
and
payments can run up to like $10,000, twenty thousand
oh,
dollars for putting in an
easily.
appearance.
Easily. And just to be clear, I mean, I've not had that much experience, but I spoke to somebody from Nabe Pro, which is kind of Yoshimoto's rival. They're the two big agents. And they said that their standard fee, irrespective of whether you get the work yourself or it comes from them, is 70%. They take 70%.
Okay, yeah. So you're saying, yeah, any work that you get through a major agency, somebody told you that the agency's cut was 70%?
Someone from the agent said that's their arrangement for.
Yeah. So I think
Maybe
they
they were trying to rip
negotiate.
me off.
I think they negotiate different contracts for different people, but I've heard that in like the big agencies, one of the reasons they justify taking such a big cut is because they raise you. They scout you, they train you, they sometimes house you, sometimes feed you, and they raise you. And there's this very huge culture around the senpai kohai, the senior junior relationship,
Yeah,
where
there is mentorship, and they have like training academies, and
and
they'll
also
make
like
sure
your
that,
seniors are obligated to buy you meals.
right.
That's how you eat and drink for your first little while. Maybe not entirely, but they have this structure, and so they say we put all of this money, all this capital into developing you. So now when you start getting jobs, we take the lion's share. But yeah, so the idea that they would book something and go through without clearing it with their agency doesn't get a cut, and they walk away with just a fat cash payment for showing up to a party. Is a
Yeah,
big deal.
but it seems that this agency is trying to have their cake and eat it, because they're, on the one hand, they're saying you shouldn't have done this because it's for a bad organization, but
It's
also,
for an antisocial group. Do you know what an antisocial group is?
I imagine this is a poorly translated euphemism. I imagine the Japanese too is a euphemism. It will be something like, probably Yakuza.
Yes, it is a crime syndicate. They are antisocial, which like strikes me as weird because they are a society.
Yeah,
Um,
right. But
yeah,
it's like it's six of one and half a dozen of the other, because these talent agencies are basically mafia. Like, they've got a monopoly on these talents, and
as somebody who is in a major talent agency, I will decline to comment on that. But yeah, no, they can. There's a lot of crossover. Literally, sometimes the major talent agencies have higher ups that there are a lot of crossover. But whenever it comes out into the light, it's a big thing. And the Japanese for antisocial organization is hishakai soshiki. Hishakai soshiki, which is antisocial organization.
yeah.
But yeah, it is like a euphemism. It's like calling like a serial arsonist like a warmth enthusiast.
So what this clearly was, right, is like this bloke obviously like knew someone who knew someone. And they said, "Hey, look, if we just bung you $10,000 each, will you turn up at this party?"
Well, this is a huge tradition. Like this has been going on for years and years and years. And I think this time the fact that it came out into the public at a time when there's it's easier for you to have like a social media backlash, and also the fact that they hadn't run it through their agency, kind of like their agency didn't feel the need to be like, we're gonna sweep this under the rug. And this is just me speculating, but
Because they
had the
originally said they
agency
weren't
gotten a
paid as
cut,
well.
I'm sure this wouldn't be as featured in the media as it is.
Well, this is exactly it. That according to the article which I've read, they originally denied that they received any money, but then the agency were like, "We're going to investigate this," and then the agency, once they found that they had received money, then went even harder on them. So
Yeah.
that's obviously what this is about. And these agencies, they are complete rackets. And not only do they manage the talent, but they'll also be producing the major TV shows. They'll be managing the major tours. They'll be managing the venues that these tours happen in. Right. So sometimes, like, you know, the big downtown comedy theater is only has comics from one agency.
Right.
They are complete rackets. I suppose the difficulty with performing in front of a Yakuza audience is that when they applaud, it only sounds 80% as loud.
Why is that?
Don't ask why. It's just get the joke.
Oh, because
Just
they
get the joke.
amputated their fingers.
It's a
Oh,
it's a funny joke.
it's yeah. I
Thanks,
like
Bobby.
that. I like
And
that
so,
you never feel hesitant to go for that super low hanging fruit.
no, which is ironic considering you also make fun of my weight. So on the one hand, I'm taking fruit. On the other hand, clearly not eating it. Wonder what I'm doing with it. Bobby, have you had any? Have you had any run-in?
Have you not like read any like you know you can get fat from eating fruit, right? You know, fruit is like there's a lot of sugar in it.
No. Have you ever taken? I suppose you do. You have done a lot of freelance work, right? Have you ever had like a run-in with an agency where your agent said do this and you've said do one?
So I've been in and out of agencies. I've done a lot of work. Like I think at this point I've been freelance for longer. I rejoined kind of a national major agency last December, but for most of my career I've managed it myself. When I was in a national agency, I was running like Kyushu stuff on my own, and then when they got me national work, one agency would kick me jobs and then run it through that agency. They insisted that I take an audition to play a Navy rapist. I got an audition for a role that was muscular Navy rapist number 2, and when they told me just the role that I'd be auditioning for, and I said no, and they said, "Well, we want you to take it because you've never." Yeah,
Is a Navy rapist like a rogue Smurf?
like a what?
A rogue Smurf.
No.
Oh.
What's like a rope? Oh, right, because of the color.
Thank you.
Yes, yes.
I didn't listen to a word you said. I was just
You were
trying
just
to process
waiting
that
a
gag.
Navy rapist. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think we could jump to the conclusion of this story because I don't think we need to. I don't think you need to explain that there was a fight between you and the agency because you did take that job.
I ultimately took. So I did the audition, which they talked me into because it would be good experience, and the casting director would remember you for another role in the future. And I figured if I'm gonna audition, I'll do my best. Which like I think just I have a generally rapey vibe, so I was kind of worried that you'd walk
So
into
is that what happened then in the audition?
Yeah, I walked in and they took one look at me and they were like, "Yes, this is who we imagined when we wrote this role." But no, they when I got it, I was like, my daughters had literally just been born. So I was like, I'm thinking about how when they get older, I don't want them to watch this. I was thinking about how it creates the image of foreigners in Japan, how it creates the image of Americans in Japan. And there were a lot of reasons that I didn't want to do it. And they kept saying, well, it's this famous director and it's going to be this huge, award winning drama and the actress that you will be acting on is so and so and she's so famous, and I kept saying no, I don't want to do it. So then they said the main character in this movie is going to be Ken Watanabe, and I went, that's Batman's friend.
Brilliant. And so you did you meet him?
No, we were in totally different shooting locations and never got to meet him. But then the other thing is, and this is one of those things that I don't know how okay it is to tell this story, but one of the other justifications was that it was based on real events, that it was based on not one incident, but like it was a composite of a series of incidences in Okinawa where people stationed at the American naval base there were sexually assaulting locals. And there were a handful of those incidences that they said, we're going to compile them and make a fictionalized version to use in this story. And so I kept kind of trying to tell myself that, it wasn't me who was creating, that negative image. But I'd go back and forth and go, I'm helping to further it, but it's based on truth. And then after shooting Wrapped, there were two more incidents in Okinawa where two separate people stationed at the naval base, or one was an ex sailor there, sexually assaulted Japanese women. And I kind of went, you know what, I'm not a piece of shit for taking this job. I'm a piece of shit because somebody got sexually assaulted. And I went, well, I feel better about myself.
Yeah, and yeah, so but that is a somewhat of a moral quandary, though, isn't it? That but
Very
for
much so,
the
yeah.
fact that people from your country committed sexual assault, you wouldn't have got this work. Did you? I remember going to watch it in the cinema with you. It wasn't even, it wasn't even like, you're not even that identifiable.
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
a couple of scenes where, like, if you know you, it's like, oh yeah, that's Bobby. He's about to do something nasty. But
Yeah.
You could
Yeah, no,
probably
I'm not the focus of the scene. But the other thing is, like, the idea that
you acted it well, though. I believed it.
Appreciated. It was not a fun thing to act. It was not good. But the other big issue that's kind of a moral issue that I think would affect me more in the future if I had another similar opportunity is that it's a woman being raped being used as a plot point. It like, you could have done something else to further the story, and that's a big problem in entertainment these days. Is like to give a woman backstory, to give a character motivation. What do we do? How do we write it? And you just throw in a rape scene. Yeah, so that would be one thing that I would. You don't know about this?
No, I don't. And I'm just thinking the thing that we discussed before we started recording this week was we can make this podcast lighter.
Yeah, lighter. Yeah.
Goodness me. And so is that and presumably, right? That's as a result of having an all-male writing team.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Oh, that's bad. Sometimes I wonder whether these agencies, they put you forward for roles which benefit the agent rather than you specifically. So I can definitely think of some examples where I was asked to do work for free on the basis that it would build good relations with the station. And what that meant was, it's not the good relations aren't vis-a-vis me, right? It's good relations between the agency and the station. Who are yeah, they've sent us a few foreigners to do whatever it is they wanted me to do or say.
Well, I don't have any experience with the industry in the West, but in Japan, what I see on TV or what I have seen in entertainment, I always kind of thought that an agent's job is to be the representative for the talent. And in Japan, it's very much, it's their job to please the client, and they will sacrifice the talent if it means pleasing the client. But you were a child actor, weren't you?
Yeah, briefly. I did it for a couple of years, but there, I suppose my agent did have my back, and they put me up for stuff which they knew I wouldn't be qualified for, but because it would be a good experience, they wanted me to get to know the industry. But certainly, I mean, look, this was between the ages of kind of, I don't know, 12, 13 and 15, 16. So I don't suppose I was that exposed to the reality of the UK industry. But one thing I do think marks the Japanese industry out is they do have this. I mean, it's true of all of Japanese society, right? It's very long-term thinking, and it is to do with kind of long relationship building. And I think because so many people go into the talent agency without expecting it to be a long-term thing, right? They want a flutter of fame, or they want to scratch their
itch.
Yeah.
Foreigners especially, they want to go home and say, I modeled in Japan, or, I was on TV in Japan, or
exactly.
I had a career in Japan, and now I'm going to build an Edinburgh Fringe show around it.
I know, and that is absolutely pathetic.
It's sad.
What a loser. but so I do think that, like, where the long-term relationships are built is between the agency and the various production companies, right? And the various production companies what often happens, right, is the production company will say to the agency, we're going to just pay you a retainer, like a fee, to fill the casting for this role. So often it's not even the production companies that do the casting, it's the agency. They just trust the agent to fill that spot with an
Right,
appropriate
right.
person.
And
And
that's
so
one of
yeah,
the big problems with acting here is that, you know, agencies will say, you know, we have the clout, we have the upper hand in this arrangement, so we're taking responsibility for filling this role, and we're going to put this young up and coming kid who we want to build into the next star into this role that they're not qualified for. And so you remember we talked about the jitsuryoku-ha? There's
uh,
another
yes,
there's another one that's engiha. So in Japan, you can call somebody an engiha actor, which means an actor who comes from a background of acting. like that's they're an acting actor. That's the
that's
actual
funny.
term for it, which means that the assumption is that there are other actors out there who are non-acting actors.
Well,
And
actually, but
that's
an
true.
an acting actor sounds like a misnomer because an acting actor sounds like someone standing in for the actual actor. What do you think? Oh.
Like, he's in charge of the acting for today, but he's not the real actor. He's the acting actor.
And well, it is funny, isn't it? And obviously, you know where the money is made, right? It does appear to be that. I think they call it the blockbuster economy, don't they? Right, that like a talent will join an agency knowing that for the first however many years of their career, they're basically like living below the breadline. Like, you know, I
Right.
definitely know you introduced me to someone who you work with, and I probably shouldn't give too many details away, but he is a member of a very, very major agency, and he was complaining that he might not even be able to make his $200 a month rent.
Oh,
Right,
yeah, no,
despite
yeah, for the younger and not, and then this is a guy who's got a handful of regular TV jobs with his manzai kombi partner, his the guy that he does stand up with, guy that he does comedy with. But they work almost every day, and I think he said they made something like their take home pay was like $1,700, like 17 mon for the month on a good month, and that's
it's
for
astonishing,
somebody.
isn't it?
Yeah.
So, what do we make of this story then? Who are the real bad guys? Just some yakuza that want to be entertained, or
So
the yak? Go on.
I don't think they were even entertained. I don't know if like the comedians performed. I think it was just an appearance fee.
Ah, comedians are always performing, Bobby.
Uh, they're hobnobbing. They're hobnobbing because, you know, these people wanted to say we have these famous people at our party, and then they took compensation for it, and then the agencies didn't get cut, and now they're suspending them, and like they have to uh, replace the TV programs, the entire TV programs that these people are in. Um, so it's going to have huge ripples throughout the industry.
Yeah, but it's not though, is it? Because they're going to be replacing them with other people from the same agency. So Yoshimoto are not losing any money from this whatsoever. They're just
I don't
making an
know.
example.
I don't know if we have time for this, but it will have huge ripples. Do you remember I was on a major TV show that
Yes, I
did
do,
not
and
get renewed because
yes,
one of
because
the
some
major
moron.
talents on it?
Yeah, yeah. Tell this story.
So one of my bigger jobs was I was booked on a national show that was supposed to run for 2 years, and then halfway through the first year, one of the main MCs, who was also a comedian in this agency, um, committed a hit and run and got caught for it. And he's since bounced back, and like his career's doing
Of
okay.
course he
But
did.
in the moment, every TV show that he was on got had to be drastically restructured, re-edited, or canceled. It was coming up on the holidays, so he was in like a bunch of Christmas specials that they just had to kind of like edit him out, even in like these huge group shots. And all of his commercials got pulled. So much money, the agency had to pay so much money back to people who had contracted him. And the show that I was on, which was supposed to run for 2 years, got canceled halfway through, and we had to do like the last half of the remaining episodes without him. So yeah, it really does. Like his career might bounce back. The Japanese agency itself will not suffer in the long run, but there are a lot of people along the way who get screwed and are not bitter about it at all. In case anyone in the industry is listening to this, we're totally
Keep it
cool with
light.
it. We're cool with it.
My one brushing with something similar was I was originally brought in to do some writing or I think they called it script consulting for an advert, right? Because they said they wanted to check that it was going to be funny
Yeah. Yeah.
to an
Yeah.
international audience. And then I went in, and then I told them that I didn't think it was funny, but I gave them
Yeah.
some funny ideas, and then they cast me in it, right? And
We
it was
auditioned for this together, and
yeah, right.
I
And this
lost
was
it.
like
Yeah,
to me,
and I
'cause
didn't
I'm-
regret losing it because it wasn't funny. And then they gave it to you and let you rewrite the entire script. And
exactly. And then I brought you in, right? Then I said, listen, if I'm going to rewrite the script, this also then needs to be retranslated to Japanese so the crew gets it. And then
Yeah.
you were brought back in. Anyway, this was probably like the biggest opportunity I'd ever had, right? Because I was, for the first time, kind of part of the creative process, and they seemed to be taking me seriously. And the budget was huge, right? They had these ideas of like, we literally were filming things like explosions. We had stunt doubles. There was a
wasn't
scene
the character a robot?
Yeah, we had an actual robot, which we would do things like I would go to the onsen with the robot, and then we would do this scene. Then I would start walking out of frame, and the robot would walk out of frame too, and then just fall straight into the water with a splash. And then we did this, like we had this big studio which we created like a fake kind of game show, and then we'd film these scenes where it had finished, and like there was so much. I was so proud because I didn't achieve exactly what I wanted, but I definitely felt.
I remember seeing the script, and I remember seeing clips that you showed me, and it was hilarious. It was really funny.
Oh goodness, and like there was such high production values. I remember I managed to do this thing where like we were supposed to be talking about the meat, and we did like this extreme close up of me almost running down the street, saying the word meat with complete sincerity, and then out of nowhere you don't realize I'm holding a fork. Out of nowhere I just bring a fork up, and you can see the meat just kind of loosely dangling from this fork, and then they had this crane to it was just ridiculous. All right, it was
very surreal. It was like that Eric Andre brand of like just total random comedy.
Right, but it was really funny, and we had stuff. We literally had like explosions and parachuting. So we made the robot go paragliding. Right, so there was a stunt double that had to dress up as a robot to go paragliding, and it was the whole thing was anyway. The conclusion is I was so proud to have managed to go from being brought in to essentially a rubbish script to then managing to worm my way into being in it.
Yeah,
and I had a really nice shoot. But because the agency that was kind of producing it, so the agency which subcontracted to the agency which which I was involved with, because they went through a scandal because one of their employees unfortunately killed themselves through overwork. They basically said, well, we're just going to kind of protect our client, we're going to protect our relationship with the agency above, and they don't want to be associated with anything funny at the moment, so we've just scrapped it.
They scrapped the entire project.
They literally none of that. And I even said, I was like, can I at least get a copy of the footage? And they went, we're just pretending it never happened, which is like seems to me like such an overreaction. But the reason they did it, right, was purely because they had this relationship with I can say the name of the agency, Dentsu, right?
Yeah.
So this smaller production company had a relationship with Dentsu. Dentsu got cold feet, and they just said, fine, we'll do what you want. Because for them, that longer-term relationship was more important than their one-off relationship with me or with their client. And then at the end, I think you got the job anyway because they did something really low budget.
I just wanted to say, like we wanted to keep this light. And again, we've told the story that involves like somebody killing themselves. But to put a positive spin on it, they ended up having to do a last-minute total reshoot with a totally different project, which I booked, and it came out okay. And so, somebody killed themselves, but hey, I felt better about myself.